Hi, welcome everybody to today's event. My name is Chris Frew. I'm the president of BioBuzz. Excited to welcome you to Navigating Your Careers in Biomanufacturing event. We've got a really exciting panel today. We're going to let everybody make introductions in just a minute here. But before we get going, I wanted to also thank our sponsor, ACC and LabOwl, leaders in manufacturing automation technologies for your facilities. And LabOwl's a cell culture automation system, really exciting stuff that they're doing around automating your experiments and cell culture operations. So we're really grateful for their sponsorship and their sponsoring today's webinar. Today we're here to talk about biomanufacturing, and we've got three awesome experts and leaders in the field from three different companies. Which is exciting because we can give you three different perspectives and talk about, what is happening across not only a couple different fields in manufacturing, but a couple different size companies and also a couple different parts of Maryland. So a lot of good different perspectives that we're going to be able to bring today. As you know, the industry in biomanufacturing is absolutely booming, not only from the increase in vaccine production and diagnostic work that COVID and the pandemic brought to us, but advances in cell and gene therapy and new opportunities throughout the biotech industry has really created a very much a boom in biomanufacturing. So there's never a better time to be in this field. And I think you'll get excited when you hear from our panelists today, even more on what the opportunities are in the exciting field of biomanufacturing. So you didn't come here to listen to me. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my panelists today. So for my panelists, I'll call on you to let you introduce yourself and your company. And what I'd really like you to start off with is tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, but also tell us why you joined the company you're at now and how you got into the role you're in. So Tina, why don't we start with you?
Sure, great. Thanks, Chris. My name is Tina Fiaschetti, and my background is in chemical engineering. I work with Biofactoria, and I've spent a little over half of my career there at this point, in upstream process development specifically. I joined Biofactoria specifically, though, as kind of an emerging leader in biosimilar and biodefense programs, such that I could see the work that I was doing and the contributions that I was making progress a program to make a tangible difference in ultimately the end lives of patients, which is exactly what I found at Biofactoria, as well as exciting ways to advance my career technically and interpersonally as related to accelerated drug development. So I'm happy to speak with you all today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tina. It's exciting also for me to have you here because, as you know, we've known each other for 4 years since you started at Biofactoria. So I love being able to watch your career growth there, and as Biofactoria has grown as well. So thank you for participating.
Yes, I definitely have Chris and BioBuzz to thank for introducing me to Biofactoria. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Couldn't be happier. Ron, how about you? Why don't you go next?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Copeland. I'm currently the Senior Director of Analytical Development, Protein Chemistry, and Quality Control at NextCure. By formal training, I hold a PhD in glycobiology from UNC Chapel Hill with postdoctoral training at Johns Hopkins. And why I joined NextCure? Basically to learn and grow. At NextCure, we have state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. I was actually the second lab employee. So I was able to get that experience coming from another small company called Lampimmune. But when I was there, everything was kind of already set in place. I just hopped on the ship and kept going. But at NextCure, I was able to come in on the ground floor, buy my own equipment, oversee or assist in the overseeing of the building out of a GMP manufacturing facility. And I continue to love working at NextCure because our ultimate goal, and you can tell that from the people that work here, is basically to treat patients that have unmet medical needs. So that's our goal, and with every passing day, all of our decisions are based on that.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you being here. It sounds like you've got several different career stories you can share at different stages. So we're excited to hear that. All right, Dale. Well, let's finish with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you joined Miltenyi.
Sure thing. Hey, thanks everybody for joining, for everybody online as well, and whoever's going to view this in the future. I hope it's useful to you all for sure. Again, thanks for the panelists as well for joining and taking their time, and thanks, Chris, for organizing this. This is my first stint with BioBuzz, so bear with me if it doesn't necessarily work out exactly how you envisioned. But at least from my perspective, I'm 26 years in manufacturing, GMP manufacturing. I had some stints in PD, also with process sciences or manufacturing sciences and technology. I started in the industry with a startup company. Essentially, I answered the call. I needed insurance for my family. So I started at a job that I could get insurance for my family. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I just wasn't sure exactly how that would work out. But here I am, starting from associate all the way to director of manufacturing. I've been at Miltenyi in Gaithersburg for about 8 months now. I joined this company mainly because I was talking with some of my colleagues in the industry, and they were transitioning to a more commercial readiness state for the company, and also switching buildings as well and expanding at the same time. It's something that I had experience with, and after talking with the colleagues within the network that I have, I was able to apply and get the job that I currently have. It's something that I really love doing, setting up the teams and making sure that transition is smooth as we get into the commercial state for the products that we have. We have multiple products internal, and we also have CDMO business. So we're balancing the process validation work as we get ready to launch those products in the next year or so.
Fantastic. Dale, why don't we stick with you? Because actually that leads me into my next question for you all. So tell me about the products that you're producing at your company. And if you could paint us a picture of kind of what your manufacturing operation and process looks like there.
Yeah, sure thing. So we're primarily making lentiviral vectors, both internal and external customers. These are anti-cancer drugs. Essentially, to explain it a little bit more simply, because you can probably research it to death online and Google, but essentially how manufacturing works is we are making the lentiviral vector here, which is considered drug substance. We also will be expanding to do drug product here as well. So our site will have both drug substance and drug product. It can be a niche for scientists if they want to come in and continue to explore both those options and how they're linked for improvement. But currently we're getting the drug substance up and running this year. We're in the middle of the commissioning now. These drugs are made specifically to make sure that your T cells are trained to recognize cancer as a problem and to hopefully enhance the recovery for specific cancers. It's a new field, relatively new. It's about 10 years old. It came out of a lot of the initial HIV research that was going on in the early to mid 90s. And that's where this spidered off. And at least from a manufacturing perspective, for us, it's more of a day in the life type of thing. I think that's what you were kind of pointing to, Chris. So for us, we do not have shifts in manufacturing currently. There is a plan to implement shifts if we need to, but right now, everything for us from a GMP manufacturing wise is essentially during business hours, which gives us an advantage where we're not necessarily working overnight. We do have some items that go overnight, but they're automated and we monitor them remotely. But at least from our aspect, we're growing from about 30 people to about 70 by the end of this year, and then over 100 into next year as we continue to expand in our drugs product cell factory manufacturing as well.
That's great. Something tells me a common theme we're going to hear about is hiring and growing operations. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if that's true. Tina, how about at Biofactoria? Tell us about production, manufacturing in a biosimilars company. Tell us about the products you're working on and kind of what's unique and what it looks like there at Biofactora.
Absolutely. So our manufacturing team is really flexible and adaptive and responds to great challenges. We produce monoclonal antibodies for both biosimilars and biodefense products that we're working on internally. But our manufacturing process is a continuous perfusion process. So instead of just a fed batch bioreactor where you have cells in a bioreactor and you give bolus feeds every so often, the media is being continuously replaced with, via this ATF filter, via perfusion. Scaling this up creates a lot of challenges on the manufacturing floor that I think our Biofactoria team is great about stepping up and tackling and really overcoming. As a biosimilar company, though, the product that we're producing in this continuous perfusion environment, it's important that we're able to analyze this very carefully and understand the impact that we might be having moving from a fed batch environment to a continuous environment. So our analytical team is also really top notch. We have a state-of-the-art mass spec as well as a host of other analytical techniques that we use to better characterize the product from our manufacturing and process development runs, of course. And so our analytical team is definitely one that we are looking to expand actively now. And as we move from a phase 1 clinical stage company into kind of phase 3 manufacturing and beyond, we're also looking to transfer those analytical methods from our analytical development team to quality control. So I believe that we are also hiring on our quality control team as well. Which is, an exciting opportunity because it's not necessarily a department that has a very defined structure that you're jumping into, kind of like Ron had mentioned. It's something that you're able to build sort of from the ground up if you have good ideas about how to best maximize efficiency and meet regulators' expectations.
And so just to follow on for you, Tina, how closely does manufacturing work with some of these other parts of the process there, scaling up those processes in analytical?
Absolutely. So our teams work very closely together. As a matter of fact, this panel is in great timing. We just performed process development, ran a 6.5 liter perfusion bioreactor, which we then scaled up to the 100 liter pilot scale with our manufacturing team. And thereafter, we were able to kind of have a meaningful technical discussion about what observations did we see on the bench and what observations were maybe different or similar at the manufacturing scale, and how can we kind of compare and contrast these learned lessons to best improve our processes going forward. So it is really exciting and definitely something that you get in a small team environment. Even on the process development or manufacturing team side, if you're interested in this analytical development work, there's plenty of opportunity for discussion and better understanding, I think, than you might get it at a large company where you're more pigeonholed.
Yeah, that's great. I know that's come up in the different discussions that sometimes people think of manufacturing where you're just kind of, one part of a machine just moving things along. But this day and age, I think there's a lot more kind of mobility, collaboration, in between departments. Ron, I mean, she mentioned analytical development. I saw you perk up. So why don't we go with you now? Tell us about NextCure. Tell us about what you're developing there and what makes your operation kind of unique and tell us a little bit about kind of behind the scenes.
Great. So I guess basically in a nutshell, we work on first-class immunomedicines to treat cancer and other immune-related diseases by restoring immune function. So our proteins right now are antibodies and fusion proteins. We have 2 antibodies in the clinic and 1 fusion protein in the clinic with the goal to get another antibody into the clinic with the IND filing by the end of this year. What makes, in my opinion, NextCure unique, not just from analytical development and QC side, but also from a development and manufacturing side, is the teams are one and the same. So specifically for my team, analytical development / QC is one and the same. So at other companies, you may have an analytical development group that develops the assays, and then they tech transfer those assays to the QC group. But at NextCure, those individuals are one and the same. So there's really no tech transfer because those same individuals that develop those assays conduct the routine GMP release and stability of those assays for our products. And the same goes with manufacturing and development. So as you can see by the name of the department, manufacturing and development, we really don't have a development group and then a manufacturing group. We have manufacturing and development. So when you join manufacturing and development, you do both. So we actually, the development side of that component, they develop the process. And at NextCure, they really, you know, as in QC, we teach them how to do our analytical methods so they can actually get a holistic approach as they're developing their downstream processes. They can come in our QC lab. Obviously, they'll be GMP trained because all of our instrumentations in the lab is GMP, but they can come in the lab, do development work, looking at the various residuals, aggregations, things like that, versus just giving us the samples and us just reporting back to them the data. So from a career development standpoint, they can get a whole holistic point of view from development, manufacturing, and analytical outcomes from the processes that they develop.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It sounds like you mentioned career development. We just did a poll on the site, and growth potential and company culture were the top two reasons that people are deciding to make a move. So I love to, maybe you can, Ron, we'll stick with you since you got the mic. Talk about that, talk about what the career development and growth potential looks like at NextCure, and any examples of, how coming in on manufacturing, people have opportunity. What does that look like?
I would say is what you make it. So at NextCure, we have an open door policy. So you may be in the development and manufacturing group. However, if you want to learn QC to hone your experiences and kind of grow your career, you can do that. And as our executive team's mandate to actually let or give mid-level management authority to officially give those opportunities. So we've had instances where people in my team wanted to learn some column packing. Usually in an analytical development and QC team, you wouldn't learn how to pack columns and how to purify proteins. So it was my job to give this individual official time to go over into manufacturing and development to learn how to pack columns. So from a career development standpoint, as long as you show initiative, you produce, we don't have any secret rubrics based on time in and your formal education. If you do good work, NextCure will take care of you. Here your growth is your potential. So the world is your oyster at NextCure. And I can speak highly of that from my personal story. I don't know if we want to get into that now or go back a little, later into the talk. So
you got the mic, so you might as well take it while you got it.
Okay, well, my personal story wasn't at NextCure, but the same executives at NextCure brought me in at Amplimmune as well, which is a previous company that I worked for maybe 2 years after before it got bought out by MedImmune AstraZeneca. So I started in after I got my PhD, I didn't really know if I wanted to do an academic professorship or go into industry. So I was told by my mentors, if you don't know, go do a postdoc. So I did a postdoc at Johns Hopkins. I ended up staying there for 5 years. Approximately 3 years in, I knew I didn't want to be a professor. So I spent the other 2 years trying to get out. But getting into this BioBuzz thing is networking. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people on the call or on the Zoom, they may be in my same predicament where you could have a 5-year postdoc, you have a PhD, but you're not qualified for entry-level positions, but you're not qualified for mid-level positions. So how do you get your foot in the door? And for my story in particular, the company that I ended up joining, they actually had a glycoprotein that was kind of troublesome. So my PhD was in glycoproteins. You may think that, okay, that's how I got my foot in the door. That's not it. Networking. So my ultimate boss had a friend that was a professor at Johns Hopkins, and it was just, she just threw my name in the hat, and based on her recommendation, I got the job. So for everyone out there, networking is definitely a big part of the industry, in my opinion. And once I got to Amplimmune from a career growth perspective, and the reason why I'm talking about Amplimmune and NextCure in the same vein is because the companies were run by the same executives, and they're run similarly. I came in as a scientist one in analytical development and QC teams, and I stayed there for 2 years. And I rose through the ranks at the end, which was 2.5 years later. I rose through the ranks to become associate director, head of stability, formulation, and characterization. So we do that same avenue would exist at NextCure now. So I did make some sacrifices. I did work my butt off, so to speak, but it was from the CEO all the way down to anybody else in the company. I was able to get visibility to everyone. So my growth potential during that time, and still to this day, is as a result of the hard work and visibility that I'm getting at a smaller company to executives.
That's great. That's great, Ron. And I'll send the check in the mail for the extra plug for plugging networking for BioBuzz.
I will be looking for it. I'll check my mail.
I couldn't agree more, though. I mean, it's in this industry. I mean, there's a hidden job board out there that people don't understand that exists. And BioBuzz started 12 years ago, if you can believe that, with the mission of creating a more connected workforce. And really what we wanted to create was just open up that and increase connectivity so that those job connections and that networking happen more often. So 12 years later, I'm proud of a lot of that still happening. So I want to talk to Tina about your career story. I think that there's some similarities with you and Ron probably on how you grew your career at the size companies you were at. And then I'd like to have Dale also talk about about your career, but also Dale, I think that you provide a great perspective on how you're facilitating similar stories at your operation. So Tina, do you want to take a couple minutes, and love to hear your story in kind of how you've been able to, leverage the culture of a company like Biofactoria to grow your career?
Sure, absolutely. So I did join Biofactoria as a bioprocess engineer. I had worked in process development before and was experienced in bioreactors, but the aggressive timelines that we were looking to hit, being a biosimilar company and trying to launch to market virtually as soon as the innovator drug patent expired, really, there was a lot of work to be done. And so I think Ron is very much right. If you show initiative and you're able to produce, there is a lot of visibility at a smaller company, and that is generally, rewarded. The hard work definitely pays off. I think the late nights and whatnot. And I do think Biofactoria offers a lot of flexibility. If you're interested, and maybe you start on the process development team, but you're interested in going into manufacturing, that's definitely a possibility. We've had team members move from our analytical development team onto the QC team as well. So it's definitely something that we encourage, and I think Ron is exactly right. It is what you put into it.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Dale, tell us your perspective. You've not only got a great story of, being part of startup companies that got acquired, so you've kind of seen both sides, and now you're also working for somewhat of a larger company, mid-sized company, I'd probably say, building it up to be large. So, tell us about what career advancement looks like, from your perspective, and, what you do there to facilitate it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks. I think from the aspect of smaller to larger, I definitely agree with Tina and Ron. It does have a lot of advantages where there's a lot of cross functionality across, the same departments, if you will. Larger companies can offer that. The experience that we have here at Miltenyi now is Lentigen, which was a startup, was bought by Miltenyi a few years ago, and it's converting now into a larger company as we get ready to launch some process validation. So the startups, some of the startups that I've been able to work with, at least from my experience, is the exact same thing that Tina and Ron described. There's a lot of late nights, and definitely what you put in can be rewarded heavily. For sure, I completely agree. And if you're willing to put in and produce and grind, and definitely it'll pay off for sure. From my perspective, as we're switching into commercial and more campaign type manufacturing, I like to have, at least from my perspective, and I'll date myself a little bit here. When I started in the late 80s, early 90s, it was definitely running and gunning for me, and I was 100% in. And as I moved up through manufacturing, from upstream, downstream, central services, and like the specialist type of roles, I could see the benefits for both. I think that from my perspective, it's important for the panel, at least people that might be new and are thinking about dipping their toe in manufacturing, what it would be like. Sometimes manufacturing is viewed as very linear in how you can express your individuality or express, what you're interested in. And I'll go back to what Ron was saying, that that there's opportunities in other departments. We have the same as well with you're able to reach out to other departments. So if QC and QA are usually specific examples that I have now. We've even in the past 8 months that I've been here, we've had people that started in manufacturing, upstream and downstream, and they saw interest in sampling or how QA was run, and that's really what they were interested in. So they were able to go over there, see if there was something they were interested in, and they eventually actually transferred over to those departments. So definitely, it's inclusive environment is what we're trying to strive for. Sustainable is another big one, at least from my perspective, to balance that work life within manufacturing, to make sure that we have people that can sustain rather than continuously running lean. Companies will go through the sine wave of that depending on how revenue and business decisions are made. But currently, as you gear up for commercial manufacturing, that sustainability becomes much more important as you're trying to meet the compliance aspects with the global agencies as well. So from our perspective, inclusivity, empowerment to make decisions on the floor is another one that's going to be big for us. So the team is empowered to make those decisions, to make their lives better, to continuously improve. We're not necessarily stuck in a rut. As I'm sure Tina and Ron are aware too, from manufacturing perspective, we are not a speedboat at all. It's very tough for manufacturing to kind of switch and move gears once we're set in motion. So once we get going, it's a constant and continuous improvement from everybody from the MA1s or associate ones. That's what we call them here. It could be operator or technician. For us, it's manufacturing associates. So the associates all the way up to even my level. And once you're at director, I view my level as more to make sure I remove as much roadblocks as possible so they can do what they need to do to keep providing the life-saving drugs that we're making.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned something about misconceptions in manufacturing. Something else you shared with me before. So at Miltenyi, not everybody in manufacturing actually has to be in one site all the time too. That's another maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, most definitely. So manufacturing currently has 4 main divisions at Miltenyi, and they rotate around, but most places will have about the 4 main divisions. Upstream, which is your cell culture or fermentation. We do cell culture here. They take care of a lot of recovery. Sometimes downstream does recovery too. So establishing your rolling cultures, your bioreactor production. Downstream, as your column chromatography, your TFF or UF systems, a lot of sterile filtrations, bulk fill, filling vials or bags. Those are your typical departments where people think of where you're gowned up for most of your day. You're in and out of the suites, you're constantly keeping up with your training, and that is true. Central services is another department. They're called many different things in many different companies. That's where you have your buffer solution prep, media prep, materials group tasking with, getting some kits together, waste and stock supplies moving in and out. Also, there's usually a specialist branch, which has your training specialist, material specialist, people ordering, compliance specialist, document specialist. But many positions in manufacturing, you can actually work from home. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% on site all the time. Obviously, upstream and downstream has that component. But other departments or other sub-departments in manufacturing, you're not necessarily limited to being on site all the time. If you're interested in manufacturing and you want to get involved a little bit and you're still not sure or you have a need to work from home, it's definitely that flexibility is available. I think at most sites now, but definitely at Miltenyi.
Yeah, that was new to me. I've always thought of manufacturing as just gowned up and in the facility the whole time. That's great. Each of your operations is a little different, and something that I want to, from a technical standpoint, for some of the more experienced audience that's on the call, maybe you could talk about, like, what are some of the technical challenges that your team faces in your operation, that, the rewarding ones, the one that they're going to, come and really have to, work through, that's going to, be exciting about the job for them. Ron, do you have any examples from NextCure and kind of really how your environment and your product provides, really rewarding challenges for someone?
I guess, for me, I think it would be, if you ask different people at NextCure, they can possibly answer this question differently. But I think for me and what I know of manufacturing, it's, again, since everything is development and manufacturing, technical challenges, I think it depends on the protein sequence. So what may be working for one protein, you may have a totally different technical challenge for another protein. And that's how you learn. So if everything goes well, you're really not going to learn. But our ultimate goal is to get things quickly through development and into phase 1 clinical trials. But from a technical challenge standpoint, some proteins just don't behave properly based on the sequence. So to purify those effectively while maintaining product quality could give yourself various technical challenges. But given the team here, again, since this is a dynamic group of individuals and that crosstalk, so those technical challenges aren't in silos. So if there's a technical challenge in purification, I'm in those meetings as well as my team members, because whatever they do or however they're solving that technical challenge is going to impact me on the back end. I usually say analytical development and quality control, we're like the last line of defense. So, I know this is a manufacturing, geared talk, but our manufacturing team is growing as well. I have to do that plug. Our analytical development team is growing as well. And our quality control team is growing as well. Our research and translational teams are growing as well. So please visit our website. But in terms of technical challenges, I would say I know as a general type answer, because I don't want to get into too specific about what we've actually done to overcome specific challenges. But I think we've overcome those challenges as a team and quickly. So if you see a challenge, we don't have to call a meeting tomorrow or a week from now. You just go knocking on everyone's door and say, look, I found something out. Let's talk about it. And a decision is made on the spot. So the person that found the technical issue is also the person that can be in the room making those decisions on how to resolve it and move forward.
Yeah, that's great. Tina, what about Biofactoria? What are some of the kind of rewarding challenges that people face at a biosimilars company like yours?
Rewarding challenges. I think particularly with our scale-up operations for continuous processing, there are just about 1 million points of failure. In addition to, we do have some equipment that's a little bit on the older side as we grow and get as time goes on and whatnot. So I think, to Ron's point, the ownership that you get as an operator on the floor troubleshooting real time, and when you're able to solve that problem, it's just so remarkably satisfying. And further, I think upkeep of the equipment is also similarly satisfying, because you're taking care of something that you're invested in the operation and success of. I think our team does a great job in terms of continuously improving, whether it be the equipment or our processes. But I think space is definitely a tough one sometimes, as you're a growing startup and trying to achieve great goals in a limited amount of time. So I think it can be intimidating, but with the right kind of combination of minds, I think that our team has a great initiative and ability to troubleshoot and kind of sidestep some of the hurdles that might otherwise look like roadblocks.
I love that. The theme is team, sounds like. Dale, what about you? Anything to add to that from Lentivi? I know Lentivi was a newer type of production with gene therapy. Anything from your perspective?
Definitely similar for sure for Tina and Ron's stories. I mean, no one wants to air out dirty laundry, when you're trying to overcome issues. But honestly, that's probably what makes the job a lot of fun. And it might sound weird that way, but from a manufacturing perspective, tinkering and troubleshooting is almost continuous as you run into little things that happen during the run, or holistically, if you're having issues with like a software implementation for updating equipment, or something is just not turning right, or pump scale issues, things like that. For us, we're concentrating on establishing our base platform process, which is rather unique for lentiviral. So we're establishing that, and we're then going to be converting that for our first in human type of clinical processes, and then leverage that to help shrink a lot of our times for customers and our internal products to get to PPQ and FDA readiness. But I think that, the tinkering stories, I think we could all have a lot of those for sure. At least when I started, a lot of issues from my perspective. Probably the biggest thing that I've seen change is safety more than anything else. When I started, a lot of the issues we had were specific safety related. I've seen centrifuge bowls come out and hop around the room before, and then trying to figure out like how we can prevent that from happening again. I've seen pumps catch on fire, before as well. We don't have those issues now. I just want to be clear, but that's probably been the biggest leap, I think, from a manufacturing perspective, is implementing a lot of these specific safety items. And from a manufacturing perspective, there's usually 3 pillars that probably be common about a lot of companies, but being safety conscious, driving continuous improvement, empowered to make those decisions on the floor, as Tina and Ron were extolling as well. And owning GMP is a big part of it as well. Understanding where your role is in GMP, and understanding, how you adapt that in your specific role, and where you can help others understand that as well. So we're not afraid to help each other. We're not afraid to necessarily talk about our mistakes, at least in smaller groups, maybe not in this forum, but at least, that type of team building and going through that pain and suffering together. I mean, nothing drives people closer together on your teams as you're trying to overcome some massive problem, where you can either save time or improve yield, or overcome, some monumental problem that's just been bugging you in the back of your head. It definitely is very rewarding that way.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to shift the conversation a little bit, and I want to talk about who you hire. Like who fits well. Like what's the archetype of the person that you look for to be part of your organization? So Ron, I mean, like as you said, you're hiring across, development, manufacturing, quality, analytical, R&D. It sounds like everywhere. And I've seen your site. You have a lot of positions open, so I'll attest to that. So tell us, like, what type of person is successful at NextCure, and how do you look for that? How do you interview that person? Like, what makes them stand out?
I think, am I on mute? Oh, no, I'm okay. I think actually, obviously having, the requirements that are on the job description, is number one. So at NextCure, we're hiring at all levels. So at some point you have to, even if you're entry level, you should be qualified, because that's an entry level position. Or if you're advanced, you have, those various qualifications. But beyond that, there's a lot of the motivation, passion, and soft skills that we're looking for. So you can be qualified for a position, but if you don't have that passion, there's a lot of things that are on job descriptions and things that are not on job descriptions that may be required. But it's not to say hard work, dedication. We don't put that on the job description, but to have that passion, have a sense of accomplishment, career growth. So someone is willing to learn from an entry level perspective. Obviously, you're not going to have any experience. But someone that's willing to learn, and during the interview process, if you can speak intelligently about what you've done and how you think as an applicant, how it could translate into what the job description is, I think that's big, because that's what, personally, that's what I ask for. I know if you're coming right out of school, you're not going to have hands-on HPLC experience. Well, at least I did some years ago. But if you can actually, from whatever you did do, summer internships, volunteer things, or just shadowing someone, if you can actually speak intelligently about the experiences that you did have, and you can kind of translate them to the job description, I think that should get you in the door, in my opinion, because that's what we want to, because we as hiring managers, we know that you haven't had hands-on experience, but you got to somehow convince us that what you did do or what you do know can translate.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Tina, what about you? How would you answer that question on kind of what you look for and how you evaluate people coming to your team?
I'm definitely looking for someone who's able to think on their feet and demonstrate that they have good critical thinking skills, because at the end of the day, you don't want someone on the floor who sees something going wrong, but continues on with the steps that are outlined. You want someone who's going to jump in there and actively try and troubleshoot your problem. So to that point, I think initiative is very important. And then just kind of a sheer curiosity and love of what you're doing is really something that speaks to me. Even if you've never touched a bioreactor before, I'm willing to train, but it's hard to find that amount of passion and commitment and dedication.
Yeah, I hear that often. Kind of curiosity as a trait that really is important in this field a lot. Dale, what about at Miltenny? Anything to add? To that element, what you look for? Anything that kind of is unique or stands out at Miltenny?
Yeah, to build on what Tina and Ron were saying, that's pretty much exactly, I think, industry-wide, is that sense of wonder or curiosity, if you will, like you want to be involved. And of course, this depends on different levels, obviously. And Ron was mentioning the specific job description, skill sets. Yes, for sure. And then from our perspective, it's really about, do you want to buy into what we're trying to do company-wise for the patients? And also, we view it more as a two-way street. So yes, there's skill sets, there's soft skills that you're going to bring that will weed out passion, curiosity, what you're going to bring to the table. But for me, for interviewing as well, it's also, so what can we do to help you with your career? So where are you in your career? What are your plans? Is there some kind of at least high-level map or road that Miltenny is on now for what your stepping stone is? And how can we leverage that to maximize your time at Miltenny? Is there other avenues within Miltenny, whether within manufacturing itself or whether, outside of manufacturing? At least from my perspective, obviously manufacturing is close to my heart, and I appreciate Tina and Ron mentioning manufacturing multiple times. Thank you. But at least from my perspective, making sure that people can, leverage and get what they want, and make sure that at least as they come in and as they get curious, if they, like upstream or like downstream, there's different avenues within manufacturing. There's different flexibility in work shifts. There's different flexibility in working from home. It doesn't necessarily have to be the common notion of, you're grinding, on the floor all the time, 100%. So it's a tough question because it depends on what specific role that we're looking for. So I tried to take it up a couple of notches and kind of describe, at least depending on where you are, what would be looking for.
Yeah, no, I know it is complex because there are a lot of different roles, across the three of your companies in that field. Something that we get asked a lot is, how do I break in, right? So, how can I, as a candidate, maybe I don't have experience, maybe I got a bachelor's degree, maybe I'm a history major, or I was, been a cook for several years, or worked in food manufacturing or some other manufacturing. How does somebody break in? Is there anything that you recommend that people can do to really kind of stand out and get their foot in the door? And I'll kind of, whoever, Dale, you got the mic now if you want to start. But I'd really like to hear everyone's opinion on advice you have for that type of person that's listening today.
Sure. So from my perspective, and I think I shared briefly how I got in, which was a personal need. I graduated college with a bachelor's degree. I was thinking, potentially medical school or, PhD avenue. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I saw, again, I'll date myself, ad in the paper, back in the day, that there was a job opportunity at a company that was going to make potentially work with plasma and do some HIV research, also do some immunotherapy, and also produce some MABs. So I applied, said, hey, I was interested in the medical field. I'm not really sure what this is about, but I'd like to get on board. I need insurance for my family. You're offering insurance, and I need a job. So I'm not sure if I want to go back to school for 7 or 8 more years. God bless you, Ron and Tina. It wasn't necessarily for me, but at least from that perspective, that's how I got in. Currently, a lot of networking and online is, if you're really interested and you're willing to put the time in and start as an MA1 and you have no experience, that's perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to have any experience at all. We can definitely train you. If you don't know what GMP is, we'll have extensive training on that in GMP. The training is designed to be user or associate friendly, where it'll build on each other, so you're not necessarily overwhelmed. And I think what Ron and Tina were saying too is, depending on your initiative and how much you want to take on at a time, you can either exponentially grow into different roles, or exponentially get to the point where you might want to, or you can take more of a safer route, if you will, depending on how your personality is, or what your work-life balance is, or however you're stepping into the role, where it'll be a little bit more structured. It really depends on the need. But for entry-level position, anybody can come in and learn what we're doing and be a part of the team for sure. I don't think that personally I would limit it anything to whether you would need specific experience. We have high school graduates, college graduates, all the way up to masters that start as MAs, depending on what they're interested in at the time. So it really runs the gamut from my experience.
What about you other two? I mean, Ron, Tina, is that similar for you?
Yes, definitely. I would say one way to get your foot in the door is to ask companies about internships or like 3-month stints to get some experience. So just having some experience will definitely make yourself more marketable. So I know at NextCure, we virtually every summer since I've been here, we've had high school interns, or excuse me, college interns, and 1 high school intern. So that way, they can gain some experience, by being around GMPs, analytical development, and things like that. So I think that's one big thing to get yourself into the industry. Again, and networking. I know we're in the COVID world, so the happy hours aren't as frequent, obviously. But hopefully, we're coming out of that soon. But that's a big part. Again, I went back to it before. Networking is how I got into the industry, and it wasn't even me networking; and someone was networking on my behalf. So I think that's a big avenue into the industry, and internships.
Absolutely. And I think if you do have experience in for instance, in my undergrad, I had worked with a specific insect cell line. And in my first job search, I definitely leveraged that cell line experience to match up with a job that was employing that cell line in their process development. If you don't have hands-on skills where you can kind of direct your search to a company that it kind of lines up with what they're doing, maybe just what you're interested in, find a company that you're really passionate about, because I think that will come out in the course of your interview if you're show initiative and dedication, even in kind of the preparation for the interview.
I think that's great. So I think that's undervalued. And we, Ron, you mentioned, we're kind of coming out of this pandemic. We're not doing the happy hours like we used to, but networking is, it happens on how you present yourself online these days, right? So I'm assuming, I've seen you all on LinkedIn, so I know that you are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place for networking. I'd love to hear that, like, are you all active on LinkedIn? Do you look at a candidate, kind of see if they're talking about the topics that they're interested in? I mean, are that brand that people are building digitally, does that matter to you? Tina, maybe you could start with that.
I would say we consider definitely the presence that you have online, but it's not, I would say, the largest factor in consideration. But it is important what you're putting out there. And to your point, maybe while we're kind of in lockdown during the pandemic, there are a lot of great resources out there, on the FDA website and things like that, where you're able to read the guidances about GMPs and prepare yourself in that manner too, if not with tangible hands-on experience with, theoretical knowledge on the subject.
I can cover with that, what Tina just said. Yeah, we don't, I would be telling a fib if I say if I'm getting ready to interview a candidate, I don't search on LinkedIn to see if they're there. I don't know what I'm looking for. It's just an automatic reaction, because that's just the nature of the state of society right now. I can't say I hold too much value in what I see, but I do look. So you should be careful about what you do put out there in the digital space, for sure.
Yeah, that's good advice. Where networking has come up, obviously. So where do people network to connect with you three? So networking is obviously BioBuzz. We have our networking events, which will be starting up again in the spring, which I'm excited about, thanks to our sponsors here and several others. We'll be starting them back up in a couple months here. But aside from that, like what are groups, associations, places that people can go to establish their networks and connect with people in the biomanufacturing field? I'll leave that open to anybody.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll take a stab. So a lot of it starts, you might not realize it, but like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of fall into play. You never know like who you would know. So I'm sure Tina and Ron and I, although we haven't met before this, there's probably somewhere that we're linked in the industry, I'm sure. And there's a lot of professional places that you can go to join. PDA is one, although that is, usually at cost. I mean, obviously, if people are interested, they'll be searching places like BioBuzz as well to network. A lot of times you can attend small business seminars that are hosted by the FDA. A lot of those are free, and you can start there. I started with PDA when I started back in the day, and I think that helped me establish at least a vision of kind of what I saw people in leadership positions, and whether I wanted to do that or not after I started to gain my first group leader and supervisory type of positions. But as someone that's just starting out, it's more about what you're interested in the industry, as Tina and Ron explained, and then focusing on those. If you search online, there's probably hundreds of different communities and sites and things that you can join to be involved. And even if you're just a fly on the wall trying to learn, how this plays out, and if it's something you're potentially interested in or not, it's something that I would definitely encourage people to be involved in. I mean, I've had people have their PDA and they'll search me, and I'm woefully behind. I'm in LinkedIn, but I'm woefully behind in updating it. So if you search me, it's probably like 3 jobs ago. It's in my list. It's in my queue to do, but I haven't got to it yet. I will. But either way, those type of things can't be underestimated in today's, environment. You don't necessarily have to go out, but a lot of stuff is online, and you can listen similar to this, to this BioBuzz event here. There's lots of opportunities to learn, and to meet people.
That's great. Anybody else want to contribute to that? Or I will tell you so some suggestions that I'll bring to the table for this is, PDA is a good one. Locally, the ISPE, International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering, they actually have an event coming up on the 5th, I believe. All right, the 5th, the Mass Showcase. So that's going to be in person. But there is also a lot of these associations have like directories and things like that. And don't sleep on your university or those alumni relationships. They're a great resource as well. And always be good to your neighbors. So one thing that we've heard is that, and we ask this question a lot to our clients, to our entry level talent is, oh, my neighbor worked at, XYZ company and my mom asked him to help me get an internship and I got the job. So, I know that where to network is a quote open question, but maybe a better piece of advice is just maybe like always be networking. Maybe that's a different way to approach it. Our audience doesn't think they have to, there's a one shot, one kill way to do this, but again, just keep your relationships and be open to those relationships.
That's a great point. Even when you're on your job, you're networking because, the company that I started off with got acquired and, dissolved. So I'm laid off looking for a job. So it's a lot easier to network when when you do have a job. So if you do your job appropriately, stay professional, and when layoffs or anything happen, you're able to continue that network and just pick up the phone and say, well, I just got laid off, or I'm looking for a change. Do you have any openings? So that's really big. Personal recommendations are very advantageous, so to speak.
Great advice. I had a early mentor in my career who said, Chris, never waste a lunch. Don't forget that the CEO of this company has to eat lunch every day as well. So never waste an opportunity. So, it was great advice for me growing my career. I went and I had lunch with the CEO and people were, how did you get lunch with the CEO? I'm like, I just asked him if he would mind having lunch with you one day. And they're like, that's all you did? And it became from that advice from my old mentors, and never waste an opportunity for a lunch.
That's great. I mean, again, to piggyback off of that, at smaller companies, I can speak about Nextcure and Implement specifically, everyone up from the CEO to finance, they know you by name. So they have an open door policy. So I can go upstairs right now, speak to our CEO. He's a Miami Dolphins fan. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, as you can see by the color of the wall. We can talk about Miami Dolphins. We can talk about career development. We can talk about science. We can talk about business. And that's kind of, we have an open door policy here in Nextcure where you can talk about anything with anyone if you wanted to. So again, networking, people in executive management, they have a huge network. So you may have a friend or a cousin that's looking for a job in Texas, and you can network on their behalf. So definitely network even if you do have a job.
That's great. So we're coming up to an hour here. So I'm gonna piggyback on what you said, Ron, with a couple final questions. If somebody does want to network with you, what is some things they can bring up with you and reaching out to you on LinkedIn or PDA or ISP that's going to catch your attention that you're going to enjoy talking about? Dale, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure, no problem. This actually comes up a lot, to be honest. A lot of people reach out in LinkedIn, and it's usually something simple for me. It was like, oh, I saw that you lived in North Carolina. Go Tar Heels, by the way. I think Ron, right? And Dolphins. See, I knew we had something in common, Ron. Dolphins and Tar Heels. Let's go.
Networking. There we go.
That's it. But either way, from my perspective, it's usually something simple. Like they see that I lived in a certain town and they're asking about that town, or even if it's something professional, like, hey, we're having issues with our bioreactor, and I heard that you worked with these specific bioreactors. Is there something that we can help with, and then just start building that relationship. So it usually runs the gamut, but it doesn't necessarily. I usually always respond. It might not necessarily be immediately, but I will respond. A lot of times it will be emails, whether they'll be on the website or they'll see, my email contact from Multani, or if they apply for a job, something like that, and reach out like after the fact if they interview, regardless of whether they get it or not. That's another way to do it as well. I've had that a lot too. It doesn't necessarily have to be some formalized, interest. It can be something simple. And I even had people say, hey, I want to build my networking team. And I see, at the time I was associate director, you're associate director of downstream, can we connect? I was like, sure. Yeah, most definitely. It's a small world. I might end up working for Ron and Tina one day, right? I might have been working for the person that's coming up in the ranks, that's, leaps and bounds of improvement and learning techniques that they're getting into the universities and stuff now. And that's a fantastic way to reach out, at least for me personally. And a lot of my colleagues, I feel, are the same, at least from the conversations that I have with them. And so, don't be shy, essentially. Even if you're introverted and you don't necessarily want to speak up so much, it's okay to have it where you just send a simple text or a text. Well, it depends on if you have your number, but through the LinkedIn or email or whatever, it's completely fine. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something formalized at all.
Tina?
Yeah, definitely. I do think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to make sure they craft the perfect message to start these interactions when really it doesn't require that much pressure. Bioreactors, upstream processing, analysis and modeling of that data are really my favorite things to talk about. So any sort of conversation where we're going to be engaging on that kind of thing, or you're interested in hearing about what Biofactoria does and how we're doing the bioreactor operations and modeling and analysis of the data, like I am more than happy to talk about that all day, every day. And I do think Frederick and Gaithersburg, Rockville area in Maryland is such a small world. I think that it's good, internally to have cross discussions between teams and whatnot, but I think there's also value to having intercompany discussions as well at your BioBuzz or BioBeers events and things like that. So it's just exciting to keep in touch and see what everyone else is doing and things like that. What's going on?
Just put a bioreactor picture on their profile and click a link to this data and they got you hooked.
Got me.
Ron, Tar Heels and Miami Dolphins. Anything else if somebody wants to get your attention to start a conversation and a relationship?
Well, that's the first thing you say, Tar Heels or Miami Dolphins. That's number one. But in addition to that, if they have a story or if they have a question, or because usually when we networking, it's kind of a two-way street, because every time I network with someone, I want to gain something out of the network as well. So if they have a question, even if it's, if someone in college or looking for a job, if they have a question about, again, I think one of the panelists says something that we do here. Obviously, I can't give up any confidential information, but if they have a general question that I can expand upon of what they've read on the internet, that shows me that, okay, they really want something out of this network, and instead of just having a network friend or a LinkedIn friend, so to speak, to try to get the numbers up. But I would say if they have a story, or not a whole dissertation, but like a story that links, at least what they believe I do at NextCure to themselves, and then that can promote the networking opportunity at that point.
Yeah, that's a great point. We talk to people at BioBuzz events all the time. I say, don't just go up to people asking about jobs. It's not the way to get a job. Show interest, ask about what they do, ask questions. That's how you're gonna, because what I'm hearing from all three of you is relationships are a big part of figuring out this recipe on growing your biomanufacturing career. That it's developing a relationship or establishing a relationship with that company, that person. It's a small world in biomanufacturing, so you're going to come across people. So it's not often who you meet at the networking event, but who they know that might get you the job. So I'm hearing that relationships are a big part of how careers are growing in this field, and being curious. It sounds like a common theme here.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I think to your point too, you should use the opportunity as a two-way street to understand whether or not you would fit into that job well, whether you're even interested in what they're doing in their company culture, rather than just, do you have a job?
Yeah, that's a great point and a great reason. You don't want to, get in the situation where they're like, we do have a job, come in, and then suddenly you're like, actually, I don't want that job. Now you've ruined the relationship. You're like, Great point, though. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We've actually answered a lot of the questions that have come in through the chat. I've tried to work them in throughout this process. So we're pretty good on questions. Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, so we've had a fantastic. I hope you all enjoyed this. This was to me a really enjoyable discussion. As we wrap up, I want to give everybody a chance to have an elevator pitch and tell people why they should come and join your company. So Tina, I'm going to let you start. You kicked us off today for everything else. So let's start with you. Tell us why someone should come and why they should be excited about Biofactoria.
Sure. Yeah, I think Biofactoria is exciting for many different reasons. We're kind of entering this clinical stage where we're building up a lot of our departments, whether it be analytical and QC, or for instance, on the process development side, we're moving into phase 3 commercial manufacturing, and to go along with that, process validation operations. So for someone who's more experienced, you really have an opportunity to make an impact on how not only the product and the outcome of the process, but potentially impacting the workflows to make them either more efficient or more regulatory friendly, depending on what the case may be. And I think someone who's coming in right out of college or getting their foot in the door, it's an exciting opportunity because it really does provide a holistic view of drug development, from cell line development through manufacturing, all at our facility, and all with a very exciting, passionate team who just loves to troubleshoot. And, I think the meaningful conversations that you have at work are what makes your week enjoyable. You're there for 40 hours a week. You spend almost more time with them than your family some weeks. So it is important to have that kind of camaraderie and positive environment that you're going to work with. You're excited to go to work with.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Dale, how about Miltenny? Why should someone come and join you and your team, and what's exciting there?
Yeah, most definitely. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but we have exciting growth happening from my perspective with 2 different avenues. One, we're expanding operations in manufacturing, and 2, we're changing from more of a clinical first in human to PPQ readiness for internal and multiple client products. So for us, for the lentiviral, that's definitely going to be expanding and establishing. There's an opportunity for a lot of cross-functional growth, a lot of people that can come in at various levels as well at Miltenny. And as we go into later this year, we'll be establishing our drug product at the 1201 facility as well. And that hiring will be kicking off this year. So if it's something people are interested in, again, it'll vary with different levels of ability and experience. So we'll be looking for various levels. So there's lots of opportunity for multiple levels of experience, and those opportunities, a lot of times they don't come along all at once. For us, the growth and the transition into commercial space is coming at once. So there's a lot of opportunity to get in on the ground floor, let's say, and be able to navigate your career while you're here. Because I view it as a two-way street, most definitely.
Thanks, Dale. All right, Ron, bring us home. Tell us about why someone should be coming and joining NextCure and the exciting things you have happening for them.
I think to answer that question, I could say the people here and the passion we have for the patients. So that's number one. And why you should join, that's the ultimate reason why you should join, because we have that great passion for people, for patients. And number two is, I think here you can, this is not just a job, it's a career. So even if you start off answering the door, you got your foot in the door, you can go through the ranks, become, you can take my position, that's, everyone in mid-level management, that's what I'm trying to do. I can speak specifically for myself. I'm looking to hire someone that can take my position. Now that person may be an entry-level person, then I can train them up and take my position so I could do other things for the company. That's the biggest thing for NextCure. We want to hire people that can learn and grow and help us treat patients. So if you're excited about, helping patients, NextCure is a place for you. We move very, very fast. We don't have a lot of the bureaucracy that bigger companies have, and we can actually get our job done with a high degree of compliance, high degree of quality, and help the patient. So if you talk to anyone, the patient is our client. The patient is our client. Obviously, we're a public traded company, so some people may say the shareholders are our clients. Yeah, that's true. But we're doing it for the patients. Everything we do is for the patients.
That's fantastic. And ultimately we hear it all the time. That's a big part of why people are in this field. Dale, you talked about it. A lot of people get into this field because they want to make an impact on medicine. And there's no better field than in biotech to make an impact on the lives of other people. We saw this firsthand over the past 2 years, didn't we? That biotech matters. And the work that you all and your teams do every day, and the countless other people that are going to work, developing vaccines and diagnostics, the whole world took notice and realized how important this career, this field is, and this work is to everyone around us. So thank you all. This was really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it met the expectations, that it wasn't boring. I think that you all provided a wealth of information that I've been following the chat. I know create a lot of a great value for our audience and those watching on LinkedIn Live. A couple just closing remarks. For those of you that are seeking jobs right now, there's a lot of great resources out there, and want to learn about the local ecosystem. The Maryland Department of Commerce has a great directory of hundreds of companies, thousands of companies in the region. The MD Bio Hub is a great resource with career tracks and jobs on it as well. So the biomanufacturing industry is, like we talked about, the biomanufacturing industry is growing substantially. I think some of the data I've seen said 10% over the next couple of years. And the workforce is very important to the patients that you all are serving. So I think you all described it very well today, that careers in biomanufacturing are very exciting, they're very rewarding, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So at BioBuzz, we want to continue to do our part, hosting events like these. We'll be back in person, live events coming soon. Our organization exists really to help better connect the workforce with employers in the biotech industry. So this is a great example of how we do that. We also have a job board available that has a lot of jobs from the local industry. And each and every day, we're doing our best job to tell the stories of the companies like you that are doing amazing work and developing really innovative new therapies and medicines, so that job seekers understand what companies are right for them and can find their career path. I will do another little plug here that we have a new product coming out in the next couple months, that we're launching an online community for biomanufacturing and entry-level jobs to help facilitate a increased diversity and increased career mobility into the biomanufacturing field. So more to come on that, but we're excited about that because I think I've heard from everybody today, there's nothing but great opportunity and lots of jobs available at your companies. And we want to continue to do our part to help, connect you with that right workforce. So Tina, Dale, Ron, thank you so much for this today. I know you're taking time away from your day to share your experience and wisdom. I think you got a lot of people excited about your companies. I hope that your LinkedIns are just blowing up after this event with a lot of requests about bioreactors and the dolphins and the Tar Heels. So I'm sure you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you just to answer all these emails that are coming in. So again, from us at BioBuzz, thank you very much to you and to everybody that joined us today. And thanks for everything you do each and every day. Take care.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good luck, everybody, with your searches.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.